Hey, what's up, guys? This is the Tranquil Living Uruguay podcast. I'm Vanessa, your host. This is part two of navigating healthcare in Uruguay. If you haven't seen or listened to part one yet, I suggest you head on over there so you can get caught up on a breakdown of the structure of healthcare in Uruguay. And I do a deep dive on what tier one private healthcare and medical coverage is all about. So let's get into it. If you want to get good healthcare in Uruguay without spending US level type money for it, I'm going to be breaking it down here. As I've said before, healthcare is one of the most important topics for anyone living abroad or looking to live abroad. It may be the exact reason why you want to live abroad. So, understanding how the healthcare works here in Uruguay is key to feeling secure, especially if you are moving with a family, planning for long-term residency and or retirement. So the tier two private medical coverage is called a mutualista here. They have their own name for it. And this is what I consider the best value option you can get in terms of private medical coverage here in Uruguay. The majority of Uruguayans, the locals, they opt for this tier two private mutualista option. Anyone qualifies for it. You can be employed, self-employed locally here in Uruguay, or unemployed, like if you're a stay-at-home parent, for example. In my experience, there wasn't an in-depth entry exam to qualify, like how I described with the tier one private medical coverage. It was just a simple form that I filled out at the time that I went to go sign up for this medical coverage. If you're a retiree, though, I recommend looking into like any age restrictions or additional costs based of age or pre-existing conditions. Each mutualista is different, so you're going to have to go to each one and ask those questions in depth with them. Montevideo has the most mutualista hospital group options to choose from. Outside of Montevideo, there are a variety of options, but it is limited. Where you live is basically the determinant factor into which mutualista hospital group per se you choose. Obviously, you want to choose the option that is most accessible to you. I personally have experience with two different mutualistas. One is called Asociación Española, and the other one is COSEM. So I'll speak to those two. What makes the tier two private mutualista the best value option, I consider, is affordability, quality, and accessibility. In terms of cost, it's affordable monthly premiums ranging from $50 to $90 per month, depending on the age and your pre-existing conditions. If you are hospitalized, inpatient care under Mutualista does not offer private rooms that will cost you extra, so keep that in mind. There are co-pays, which they call tickets, and they're not required for basic primary physician visits or like eye doctor visits in my experience. Co-pays ranging from like $15 to $40 I have paid for ER services and lab work. So I said the second reason why it's the best value option is because of quality. So it's good quality care with great medical equipment, helpful staff. Some of the doctors do speak English, but not all. So don't expect automatically that a doctor or a nurse or someone attending you is going to speak English. This is where ChatGPT could be helpful for translating, or any other apps or Google Translate, for example, that you use if you are not fluent in Spanish. The doctors are pleasant, but they're not like overly nice. I think some to me just seem kind of overwhelmed by the amount of work or patients that they see in the day. And then the third reason that it's the best value option is accessibility. So depending on which mutualista you choose, there's usually a main location they call it the central, with a hospital on site. And it's usually the busiest location. Then there are policlínicas, which are clinics, medical clinics spread around various neighborhoods in Montevideo. So this is like for general doctor's appointments, or if you have a specialist, visit that's just like an office type, non-hospital visit, you can go to policlínica for that. And this is good because you have more options for appointment times if you're willing to look at appointment availability across the city and able to get around to other policlínicas. The wait times for appointments does depend on the location. So some of the policlínicas are busier than others. You're not required to go to the closest policlínica to you every single time. Like I said, you can kind of switch it up, see where there's availability. If there is like a specific doctor that you want to see, obviously you'd have to look up which policlínicas they're at. Wait times tend to be a little bit longer than the tier one private healthcare options, but not too long. I would just expect at least like 2 to 3 weeks. You're also welcome to go straight to the ER if it's something that you can't wait for or something that you're like really concerned about, and they could possibly help you there. That's another option. And if the mutualistas interest you, I do recommend walking into a policlínica to check it out and see if you like what you see. You want to feel comfortable with the mutualista that you pick and know what you're getting yourself into. So definitely go check it out, walk in, take a peek, see if it's something that you'd like. Now I'll tell you about personal experience with Asociación Española. Asociación Española is the largest mutualista and like the most widely available across the country. And this is because of this broad network that they have of policlínicas around the country. And I think all of them, if not most of these clinics, do have like a small ER, like emergency room option if you want to go. The main hospital is obviously located in Montevideo at the Central location. There's added convenience with Asociación Española because of the policlínicas are just so spread out. And a lot of them in Montevideo are located in the shopping malls, actually, which is kind of weird, but actually convenient. For example, parking in the parking garage. And if you happen to need to pick up anything from the shopping mall or go to grocery store, because usually at these malls, off the top of my head, I'm thinking of Nuevo Centro and Punta Carretas. They do have a grocery store like a Devoto, Fresh Market, a Géant there. So sometimes it is convenient if you have to like be running errands at the same time and going to doctor's appointments. Some locals, I would say, believe this Asociación Española network is overwhelmed. There's just so many people that are a part of it. So when you go to a policlínica to see a doctor, it is crowded. And I've waited over an hour before to be seen. I've noticed, however, though, it just kind of depends on the time of day as well. So you have to take that into consideration. And I think the network's overwhelmed because it was like signing up was like the easiest thing for Asociación Española. To sign up, I actually had just like reached out to them online. I like filled out a form, sent an email kind of thing, saying I was interested in becoming a member, which is also called a socio. And the group you work with is called Afiliaciones. And that's the one who takes care of like the registering of you into the network. So they got back to me, scheduled like a day and time for them to actually come to my house and get the sign up done to become a member. So two like Asociación Española like representatives like drove out, outside of Montevideo, live in the outskirts of Montevideo. And they came to my house. They described, the coverage. They gave me a flyer with like info, signed some paperwork, provided my credit card info for like automatic payments to my US Visa credit card. And I just like, we didn't have to leave the comforts of our own home. So you always have the option to go and do it in person yourself too, if you like to do that as well. But it was like the easiest thing. So Asociación Española also has an app where you can make appointments. That's like the easiest way to make appointments. I've tried calling before, but the line is you just have to wait forever, and it's just not really convenient to make an appointment by phone. Sometimes it is. With Asociación Española, in my experience, it has not been. So I just do it on the app. If you need to see a specialist, you need a referral, which they call a pase to see a specialist. You can't direct book like an appointment directly through the app for a specialist. So you have to see a primary doctor and then they will refer you. You can narrow down the appointment times by location, and The other good thing about this app is like you can see your medical history, pay bills, access the telehealth services that they offer. So that's pretty convenient. I'll talk in depth about that a little bit later. The process of care is different than what you're used to in the US. And by this, I mean there's just lots of like physical steps involved when you go to the doctor's office. If you've received healthcare in Europe, then this is like the most similar of what I personally experienced when I lived in Spain specifically. So I'm going to go over like a basic scenario for like a general physician or eye doctor appointment, for example, a non-specialist. So first you make an appointment via the app, in person, or on the phone. You select a day and a time, estimated time. And the time, when you pick that, you're also given a number, which they call a turno. So each doctor has like a specific time slot of when they see patients in the day. For example, between 2 to 6 p.m., they're going to be at that policlinica in that office seeing patients. And based on that number, the turno that you get for that time slot, that's when you get like an estimated time for when the doctor will get to your number for the consultation between the 2 and 6 p.m. time frame. So that sounds a little like complicated, but it's actually not. You just kind of, they give you like an estimated time and you just show up for that time, but you also have a number associated to the estimated time, if that makes sense. So when you walk in the building of the Policlinica, the first thing you have to do is you check in at the kiosk. They have kiosks everywhere, and use your cellular number to check in. Just type it in the kiosk, and you click through the steps to get your orden, which is a printout of your medical appointment time and number. And then the next step is to announce your arrival. So in the system, they know you are there in the building in the waiting room. And this is important because if you don't announce yourself, then you're not going to be called. Like your number's not going to be called to see the doctor. So first you go into the kiosk, type in your cellular number. You don't have to talk to anyone, just type in your cellular number. You print out your orden, like your appointment for the day, and then you go back in and then you announce that you have arrived. Very important, do not be late. Whatever estimated time you got from when you made the appointment, make sure you're there earlier to check in. They're very strict on this. If you're late, you get bumped to the end of the line for that time slot that the doctor is there, or they may not even see you. So for example, when you go to check in at the kiosk, you won't even be able to check in if you are past the estimated time. There is an information kiosk. Sorry, there is an information desk where you can talk to someone in Spanish, but most people just use the kiosk because they're faster to do the check-in process. So in the waiting room, so you walk into this room, it's just a ton of chairs everywhere, and then consultation rooms throughout the room with the doors closed. There's numbers on each door, and there are screens on the walls in the waiting room above you. And when it's your turn, your cedula number will pop up on the screen, and it dings and it lets you know which consultation room to go into. You have to be attentive and not miss your cedula number pop up. I've waited up to an hour like in these waiting rooms, so you have to plan on being there for a while just in case. The consultations are usually quick. Doctors are patient with me and like answering questions, but I notice like they don't tend to linger. For the tier 1 private, like usually a doctor, they kind of like have more time. So they're like, oh, like, where are you from? How long have you been here? And I just kind of tell like the whole background story of why I am in Uruguay. But usually they're just kind of like, okay, well, anything else? And then I'm like, nope. So it's more of like a quick in and out process, especially at like a busy location. If the doctor prescribes you medicine in the consultation, the doctor will enter the prescription into the system, and then you go to the pharmacy. So this is like another like multi-step process. Then you can go to the pharmacy on site at the Policlinica, and you give them your cedula number. Then they give you a printout of what your medicine is, and you take that printout to the checkout counter, which is also called the caja, and you pay there with cash or card. It can be credit card too. And then you go back to the pharmacy to show them the receipt, and then they hand you the meds. So that's like another like difference in terms of like a multi-step process. You're just like constantly having going, okay, I get my prescription for medication. I have to go to the pharmacy, give them my cellular number. They tell me what the medicine is. I confirm. I take it to the checkout to pay, and I have to go back to pick it up. So, like I said, it's just like like multi-step process. So, just reality, it's like old school, you know? It just takes a lot of steps. You may have to wait in line for a while for all of these steps. For example, when you're waiting in line at the pharmacy, depending on how busy it is. Some locations are busy, then you have to grab like a number just to wait until you're called for you to go to the window. So, like I said, just very different to what you're kind of used to in the US. So these are just like an example of bureaucratic steps that you have to take, which is not how it is like in the US. Okay, so when it comes to specialists, to see a specialist, you need a base, aka a referral from a primary doctor. You need, for example, you need a base to see a cardiologist or a urologist. You know, you won't be able to schedule an appointment without this base. An orden is like a prescription or medical order for labs, blood tests, x-rays, imaging tests. You need an orden from the doctor in order to get labs or tests done. And then another word I'll throw out is tickets. It's, you know, the copay that's required usually just for lab work, not for the consultation. For Asociación Española, emergency ambulatory services are included with the membership or health coverage plan within the city limits, and it's under the same name. So you'll see Asociación Española ambulances around. They're not contracted out to another company like other mutualistas or like the tier one private. This one is in network, everything Asociación Española. A sanatorio is what they call the main hospital at the Central location. For ER services, I think I briefly mentioned, they do have them at the Policlínica. I've paid like a $15 US dollar like copay. The one closest to me is open 24/7 with a full-time nurse and one doctor on staff. And the copay you pay at the exit once you're done with the appointment. And then so we did have a situation where we did go to the main ER at the hospital, and this was for a foot injury that my husband had. So fun fact, the main ER at the Central Hospital for adults is separate from the ER for kids. And there are two separate areas in waiting rooms for kids away from the adults. So if you have like a kid accompanying you, they're not allowed to go in past the waiting room in the ER at the Mutualistas. And I think this is just kind of like more of a cultural thing, maybe to like protect the kids from like seeing anything bad. We were there for my husband, but if I was like by myself with my daughter, I don't know what I would have done if she couldn't, you know, go back with me. So I don't know, but that's definitely like a cultural thing. Because even with the tier one, I forgot to mention it in part one, but in the tier one private, for example, the Hospital Británico, there's the waiting room and the ER services for kids is in a separate room, but like right next door to the waiting room and area for adults. Okay, so I'll give you a quick rundown of our ER experience at the main hospital. My husband had a bad foot injury, so we went to the ER. We checked in with our cellular number at the check-in counter. This was a real person, not the kiosk. We went to triage where we first talked to nurses. They got a background of what had happened and the type of injury. They sent us upstairs to a triage to be seen by a doctor to get evaluated there. We waited about 30 minutes to be seen. This room was pretty full. And the doctor there did speak English, actually. So we got kind of lucky in that sense for like explaining what had happened. They determined that my husband needed to be wheelchaired over to the x-ray area. And so we had to get a pase, like a pass to go get an x-ray And then after that, to be seen by an orthopedic surgeon that was there on site at the ER. We ended up having to wait like another half an hour to be called for the x-ray. And then whoever evaluated the x-ray, it was inconclusive. So they ended up ordering a CT scan, which I learned was called a tomografia. So mind you, I'm kind of like learning like all of these medical words and terms like as I went for this visit. So there was a traumatólogo at the ER, which is an orthopedic surgeon. Foot and leg injuries are pretty common here in Uruguay with locals because of like the amount of soccer players and kids and adults that like to play soccer here. So there's usually always like an orthopedic surgeon like on site at an ER, I noticed. So we got the pase to see the orthopedic surgeon, and then he evaluated, the injury, gave, pain meds, ordered, for us to get like a walking boot, and then that we had to schedule an appointment with the orthopedic surgeon, like specialist, to schedule a visit with him and possibly have to do surgery. So all in all, we ended up spending 3 to 4 hours in the ER, probably closer to 4 hours, between all the testing and x-rays done on the spot. There was an on-site pharmacy, so all in all, we ended up paying about $4 for medication. I had to go to a separate orthopedic store to get crutches, which renting them was $11 a month, so not bad. And then we had to purchase like a walking boot, which ended up being $100. So that was our ER experience. So now I'll tell you my experience with COSEM. So COSEM is another mutualista here in Montevideo, another well-known mutualista. I signed up in person at one of the policlinicas. It was a quick 15, 20-minute sign up. I opted to pay extra for travel insurance, which is $15 a month, and that's automatically charged to my account. It's just, taken out of my, local bank account. And the appointment process is the same as Asociación Española, like how I explained. Again, the doctors are not really forgiving if you are late. And I learned this the hard way. So one day I couldn't find street parking for a quick appointment that I had, and I was circling around for half an hour. I arrived late, and the kiosk would not let me check into my appointment. I went to the customer service desk. They reconfirmed I was late, which obviously. And they said, go knock on the consultation door where the doctor is and see if he's willing to see you. Mind you, the only reason I was there was to renew my birth control prescription because every 6 months you have to do it in person at this COSEM Mutualista. And I wasn't able to do it over the phone when I tried. So I go knock on the door. The doctor is like clearly annoyed because remember, it's like the call system. So there's like a screen in the waiting room where they call your cellular number. And, he didn't call me. I just went up and knocked like the receptionist told me to do. He reconfirmed that I was late. And I said, yes, I know, but it's just a quick appointment. And he told me I needed to go back to the customer service so they can put me back into the system and get a number so I can be called so he could see me. And at that point, I was just personally just like so fed up by the whole thing, between not being able to find parking, everyone telling me I'm late, which I already know. So I decided to leave because I just didn't like how he was like rude to me, this one specific doctor. So I just ended up rescheduling my appointment at another location. And I think this was probably a one-off, and I probably caught this guy off on a bad day, but it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So anyways, I ended up going to another doctor and had the quick appointment there. Through the COSEM app, I can access, my medical history, schedule appointments, and the best part is what I've used a few times for this specific mutualista is the video consultation through their ER services that they contract out to. SEM is the name of the company. It's like a third party that they use for emergency ER services. So the ER ambulatory services are, like I said, through this company called SEM. And I'm also able, they have policlinicas as well, and I'm also able to go to their policlinicas if I need to as an added option in case I can't get an appointment anywhere in the policlinicas in the time frame that I want. So that is an option. I also do my dental through SEM now because they have little, like at their policlinicas, they do have, or there's one in Montevideo where they actually do dental services. So I go there for cleanings and I just pay $20 for that. So, like I said, through the COSEM app, I can easily do a video teleconsult through SEM. I just hop on, indicate that I need to speak to someone, and they put me like in an online waiting room. And within a few minutes, I'm connected to a real doctor via a video consult through the app. And I don't necessarily have to go in person. I can just, ask my questions, tell them like my ailments or what I'm going through. And this remote ER consult is for non-emergency services, but it's my favorite feature because it's immediate. I can do it from the comfort of my bed and it works. Like I did it when I had a bad stomach virus one time, and it was just so nice. She just kind of told me over the phone the prescription that she gave me and what I needed to pick up at the pharmacy. And it's just like really nice, easy, and pleasant. And mind you, all in Spanish. I'm bilingual, I speak Spanish, so that was helpful. With COSEM, I signed up using the FONASA benefit, and FONASA stands for Fondo Nacional de Salud, or the National Health Fund. So you're eligible for FONASA coverage if you are locally employed or locally self-employed. And this means you are paying into the Social Security system known as BPS. I did the self-employment route, also called a monotributo. And if you have any kind of side hustle here in Uruguay, you can work with your accountant to register as a small business, also known as a monotributo. And this is an advantage because it gives you the opportunity to pay into the Social Security system for retirement and access these FONASA health benefits. And it's also good to be in the tax and Social Security system. This way, if you are looking into getting loans, like a car loan down the line or something, you just have history in their BPS Social Security system. My monthly payment for this is like $115, $120, depending on exchange rate a month. And this is paid directly to BPS for my monotributo self-employment, which includes the taxes required for the monotributo business and my health coverage at the same time. So I don't pay separately to COSEM. I just do one payment to BPS, and that includes my health coverage. You have to enroll into FONASA at the Mutualista if you are eligible by employment or self-employment. So when I signed up for COSEM through FONASA, I had to bring in like my BPS monotributo paperwork and fill out some forms. It took about like a week and a half, all in all. After all the documents were signed and submitted, I was able to access the healthcare during that interim time at COSEM, which was nice. So to clarify, I don't pay the Mutualista COSEM directly. It is covered directly through my monthly BPS payment for the monotributo. And the good thing too is that you can also add spouses or dependents to the health coverage through FONASA. And I believe, if I remember correctly, they charge per person like to add on like $30 US, if I remember correctly. I might have to go back and check. But you can add, like I can add, my husband and my daughter to that as well. Being enrolled at a Mutualista through FONASA is just like if you were enrolled independently as a member or socio. You get the same coverage, whether you're FONASA or just like independent enrollment. And the process of going to doctor's appointments is the same as how I described for Asociación Española. Like for example, this one that has an on-site pharmacy, which is great. I've paid for antibiotics, I've paid $10. So that's, I think one of the good things about these mutualistas is that you can get the discounts for medicine at the pharmacies there. My birth control is just like $2 per box. The only hassle is that I have to renew this prescription every 6 months in person, as I talked about earlier. at a local, if I just were to compare just those costs alone, those $2 per box at a regular like local pharmacy, like a pharma shop, I would be paying $20 per box. So there are definitely cost savings being associated with a mutualista when it comes to medicine. Like I said, you can always shop around at the different mutualistas to compare pricing via independent enrollment or via FONASA, review the coverage, the services, scope out the facilities to see which one appeals to you. And just to kind of give like a quick summary for the tier 2 private mutualistas, I'll give you like my pros and cons. For pros, it's reasonable, affordable monthly payments. The on-site pharmacies and medications are cheaper than if you were to go at a regular pharmacy. Office hours go on to 8 p.m. normally. They're accessible. Some mutualistas have multiple locations of their policlínicas to choose from around the city or in the country if you're traveling, to the beach, for example, if you are traveling out to Rocha or Viriapolis, there's probably a policlínica there. You have the option to add on travel insurance. It's good quality, not the top tier quality that I described in the tier 1 private, but in the end, it's healthcare that works and good. So it's a hit or miss when it comes to the doctors speak English. Depending on your age, there's no extensive entry exam, just fill out forms for, describing your medical history and pre-existing conditions. But like I said, depending on your age, your age may affect this if you are kind of like retirement age. I just don't know because I'm a millennial. I'm 37, so I haven't had to worry about that. FONASA is an option where coverage is paid fully through your BPS monthly tax payments. So those are pretty much my pros. Cons is just depending on the location and time of day, these policlínicas can be crowded, resulting in long wait times or like crowded waiting rooms. You may have like a 3-week wait for the next available appointment for a general doctor. And if you need to see a specialist urgently, they do give you the option to call in the morning every day to see if like a time slot opens up due to cancellation, but you just like have to be calling every day. Like for example, like I wanted to see a dermatologist and like, oh, we are filled with appointments for the rest of the quarter. It's like they open them up by quarter or something at COSEM. And she was like, you just have to call every day and see if someone cancels. Call by 8:30 a.m. is when we will know. And so that's just like an extra hassle. Another con is just like a multi-step process for appointments. Like I described, even just like getting your medications, like you have to go here to the pharmacy and then you have to go pay and then you go back to the pharmacy. You have to wait in line. So it's just like constantly kind of like waiting in line. But, it's like, it's saying like you get what you pay for. It's cheap. So you just kind of like put up with it. And like, you just have to, grab a number and wait. So they're not really another con. They're not forgiving if you are late. And in the tier 1 private, I never had to worry about this. If I was late, it was like not really a big deal or a problem. They would just, okay, squeeze me in whenever they could. If you go to a policlínica in the city, street parking may be an issue. It was an issue for me. So know where the nearest parking garage is or plan to arrive super early to allow time for parking because you need to be on time. And another con is that, like I said, doctors may not be fluent in English. So be prepared for that. There most likely will be someone there on site that could understand you. Or at least if you can explain in English, they'll respond in Spanish kind of thing. So if you need to go with a buddy or use some kind of Google Translate or ChatGPT, keep that in mind. So, well, that is all for now. Thank you so much for listening or watching. If you liked this episode, please like, follow, or subscribe to the show and channel and share your thoughts or comments because I read them all. So my goal of Tranquil Living Uruguay is to be your passport to Uruguay, a place I call a hidden gem south of the equator. Whether you're visiting, traveling through, or you're an aspiring expat, I'm sharing real life lived experiences from the perspective of an American Latina millennial expat. And remember, life abroad doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be tranquil. Cheers.